Ethan lived a quiet life on the outer edge of the colony. His small apartment, tucked into the corner of the sprawling human-alien settlement, was simple but comfortable. Every morning he would wake, brew a cup of coffee, and walk to the engineering lab where he worked. Life was routine, and he liked it that way. He enjoyed the predictability of human schedules, the hum of machinery, and the comforting silence of his own space. That changed the day the administration announced a new roommate would be moving in. Ethan had expected a human coworker, someone assigned due to housing shortages, but when the message arrived, he saw the words, "Assigned alien roommate, Lyra." His first reaction was disbelief. He had lived in a settlement with aliens for years, but never had one as a roommate. The thought made his chest tighten with anxiety. He had no idea what to expect. When Lyra arrived, Ethan opened the door to find a creature that seemed more like a living painting than a person. She was humanoid, yes, but her skin shimmered with shades of soft violet and silver, constantly shifting as if reflecting her emotions. Her eyes were large, dark, and full of curiosity. Long, elegant fingers moved gracefully as she carried a few small belongings, none of which looked familiar to Ethan. "Hello," Ethan said cautiously, stepping aside to let her in. Lyra's voice was melodic, almost musical, yet structured in a way that made him pause. "Greetings, human, I am Lyra, assigned for cohabitation." Ethan blinked. "Cohabitation, right, that's roommate stuff." He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "I'm Ethan. Welcome." Lyra tilted her head, and her skin briefly flickered to a pale blue, which Ethan assumed was a sign of curiosity. She scanned the apartment with wide eyes, her attention lingering on the small details. A stack of books on the table, the soft hum of the heating unit, a half-broken coffee maker. Ethan led her through the apartment, showing her the bathroom, the small kitchen, and her assigned room. "I usually keep things simple," he said, hoping to communicate that their space would be easy to share. Lyra nodded and made a soft sound, something like a gentle chime. "Understood. Simplicity is efficient." The first week was a mixture of chaos and fascination. Lyra approached every task with a kind of methodical curiosity that made Ethan both frustrated and impressed. She tried cooking, following instructions from a human cookbook, but somehow ended up flooding the kitchen. She rearranged furniture to what she called optimum energy alignment, which resulted in Ethan tripping over chairs for 3 days straight. And when she first attempted to use his hollow device, she accidentally triggered an alarm, sending a red alert through the apartment complex. Despite the mishaps, Ethan noticed something remarkable. Lyra was genuinely curious about human life. She asked endless questions about simple things: why humans liked coffee, why they laughed at certain jokes, why they needed sleep. She tried to imitate his movements, copying the way he stretched in the morning or poured water into his coffee mug. Watching her mimic him, Ethan found himself laughing more than he had in months. On the 5th day, Ethan returned from the lab to find Lyra standing in the middle of the living room, eyes fixed on a broken chair. She had disassembled it completely, examining every joint and screw. "Human object, structural integrity insufficient," she said matter-of-factly. She then began to reassemble it in a way that, by all appearances, made no sense at all. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, half amused, half concerned. Lyra looked up. "Improving. Your chair will now endure greater force and provide more comfort." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure it needs." Before he could finish, the chair collapsed under him anyway. Lyra's skin flickered briefly, and Ethan realized that this must be her version of embarrassment or apology. "I will continue adjustments," she said. By the end of the first week, Ethan was both exhausted and intrigued. Lyra had an energy about her that made every day unpredictable. He found himself talking to her more than he expected, answering questions about human culture, explaining slang words, and even telling stories about his childhood. She listened intently, her eyes reflecting every nuance of his words, as if she were storing them in a memory that was far beyond human comprehension. One evening, after a long day at the lab, Ethan returned to find Lyra hovering over his hollow device. Sparks of light flickered as she touched the controls, analyzing, adjusting, and testing. He watched silently, fascinated by her precision and speed. "You are skilled," he said finally. Lyra's skin shifted to a deep purple, which Ethan had begun to associate with pride. "I learn quickly. I am curious about human technology. You appear to find it ordinary. I find it interesting." Ethan smiled, realizing that their roles were beginning to reverse. Where he had thought he would teach her about life on the colony, she was already teaching him to see it differently. He sat down on his sofa, watching her work, feeling a sense of admiration growing quietly inside him. The next few days continued in a pattern of small chaos and subtle learning. Lyra explored every aspect of human life she could, asking about music, games, and social customs. Ethan introduced her to human food, showing her how to cook simple meals. She tasted carefully, analyzing every flavor, and gave her opinions in a series of melodic sounds and gestures that, strangely, made sense to Ethan. One afternoon, while they were sharing a meal, Lyra asked something that stopped Ethan mid-bite. "Ethan, why do humans fear change?" He swallowed, considering. "I guess because change is uncertain. It can be dangerous, uncomfortable. It can ruin routines." Lyra tilted her head, her skin shifting to a gentle green. "Uncertainty is illogical. It can be dangerous, yes. But it can also be beneficial. Growth comes from the unknown." Ethan felt a chill. She had a way of saying things that made him rethink even the simplest human habits. He had spent years avoiding risk, clinging to routine, yet here was this alien, living with him for barely a week, showing him that life could be different, better, even, if he opened himself to it. Their growing understanding was tested when the colony announced a minor emergency. A section of the settlement had lost power due to a system malfunction. Ethan was called in to help. Lyra insisted on accompanying him. "I observe. I may assist." At first, Ethan hesitated. Alien assistance in human machinery could be risky. But when he saw how Lyra approached the problem, analyzing flows and patterns with a precision he had never witnessed in any human engineer, he realized her presence was invaluable. Together, they traced the fault, identified the problem, and repaired a critical power conduit. As the lights returned and the alarm silenced, Ethan looked at Lyra and felt a surge of respect. "You're amazing," he said. Lyra's eyes glimmered and her skin shimmered with multiple colors. "I am learning. You are patient." For the first time, Ethan realized that living with Lyra was not just about adjusting to her habits or teaching her about humans. It was also about learning from her, learning to see the world differently, to embrace curiosity, and to face uncertainty with courage. That night, after the excitement of the repair work had settled, Ethan found himself sitting on the balcony, looking at the colony lights scattered across the dark landscape. Lyra joined him silently, leaning on the railing. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of alien flora from nearby terraces. "You like this view?" Ethan asked. Lyra's skin flickered with soft shades of blue and green. "Yes, it is beautiful. Humans seem to overlook simple wonders. You observe too little. I wish to see more." Ethan chuckled softly. "You're right. I spend too much time working, worrying, thinking, never just looking." For a moment, they stood together in silence, two beings from entirely different worlds, yet sharing the same simple pleasure. Ethan felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest, a mixture of excitement, curiosity, and friendship. Living with an alien roommate had seemed like a nightmare at first, but now he realized it might be one of the most unexpected and remarkable experiences of his life. Little did Ethan know, the weeks ahead would challenge both him and Lyra in ways neither of them could predict. From simple misunderstandings to life-or-death situations, Their cohabitation was only beginning. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a quiet thrill at the thought of facing the unknown with someone as extraordinary as Lyra. The days after the minor power crisis were quieter, but no less significant. Ethan and Lyra had begun to settle into a routine, though it was anything but ordinary. Lyra's curiosity continued to surprise him, and Ethan found himself enjoying the little experiments she conducted around the apartment. Sometimes he would come home to find her floating a small object using her energy manipulation, just to see how it reacted to human touch. Other times, she would rearrange his belongings with intricate patterns, claiming the designs would increase productivity and mental clarity. Ethan had stopped arguing. It was easier to let her do it, and secretly, he found some of her arrangements quite beautiful. One morning, Ethan woke to a soft hum vibrating through the apartment. Lyra was in the living room, crouched over a holographic map of the colony, her eyes flickering with intense focus. "Ethan," she said, her voice unusually serious, "there is a disturbance in the energy grid. I calculate a high probability of systemic failure if we do not intervene." Ethan rubbed his eyes, still half asleep. "Disturbance? Is it serious?" Lyra's skin turned a pale orange, the shade he had started associating with concern. "Yes, critical. Human engineers alone may struggle to repair in time." Before Ethan could protest, she had activated her portable toolkit and was floating toward the apartment exit. He grabbed his jacket and followed. The colony's corridors were bustling with activity as emergency alarms flashed, casting the walls in alternating red and yellow lights. Humans and aliens alike were moving with purpose, their faces tense. Ethan felt a knot of unease. He had handled minor crises before, but never under this kind of pressure. Lyra moved with precision, weaving through the crowd with ease. "Follow me," she instructed. "Time is limited." They reached the energy hub, a large chamber filled with conduits, humming machinery and glowing panels. Sparks flew from a ruptured energy line and smoke curled into the high ceiling. Ethan's heart raced. The hub was a labyrinth of cables and power nodes, and a wrong step could cause further damage or worse. Lyra assessed the situation immediately. Energy flows unstable, core conduit near overload. Human safety at risk. Her hands hovered over the panels, and Ethan watched as the subtle colors of her skin changed rapidly: violet for focus, red for urgency, and a pale green that he could not yet interpret. "Okay," Ethan said, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." They worked together, Ethan handling the manual repairs, while Lyra seemed to sense the energy of the machines in a way he could never. She guided him, pointing out hidden faults, redirecting power flows, and stabilizing lines with a delicate energy manipulation. Every now and then sparks would arc dangerously close, and Ethan had to jump back, heart pounding. Yet Lyra never wavered. She moved like a dancer, fluid and precise, every motion purposeful. Hours passed, though Ethan had no way of knowing exactly how long. The crisis was intense, and every second counted. At one point, a secondary conduit exploded, sending a shower of sparks across the floor. Ethan froze, but Lyra reached out, a soft glow emanating from her fingertips, and absorbed the energy, redirecting it safely into the system. Ethan stared, mouth open. He had never seen anything like it. "You saved me," he said after the adrenaline began to fade. Lyra's skin flickered a calm blue. "You would have done the same for me. Cooperation is advantageous." As the final conduits were stabilized and the alarms began to subside, the colony's lights flickered back on, and an almost surreal calm replaced the chaos. Ethan and Lyra leaned against the console, breathing heavily, covered in soot and sweat. "You're incredible," Ethan admitted quietly. "I don't know how to even describe what you just did." Lyra's eyes glimmered with a soft light. "I do what is necessary. Humans often underestimate potential beyond your kind. It is understandable." But potential is not limited by form. Ethan looked at her, feeling a mix of admiration and awe. Here was a being completely different from him, yet working in perfect harmony with his skills. He realized that the fear he had felt at her arrival had vanished. In its place was respect, and a sense that together they could face anything. The aftermath of the crisis left the colony buzzing. Word spread quickly about the teamwork between a human engineer and an alien newcomer. Some colonists were cautious, skeptical of Lyra's abilities, while others were openly impressed. Ethan noticed the way she remained calm under scrutiny, observing every reaction and learning from it. He found himself smiling. She had already adapted to human social behavior better than most humans he knew. Back at the apartment, the night was quiet. Ethan and Lyra sat on the balcony, watching the colony lights twinkle across the landscape. "You were amazing today," Ethan said. Lyra tilted her head, the gentle glow of her skin showing a mix of emotions he could not yet identify. "I only assisted. Your courage and problem-solving were also effective." Ethan laughed softly. "I guess we make a good team." "Yes," Lyra said simply. "Teamwork, efficient, successful. We complement each other." For the first time, Ethan felt a strange warmth, something deeper than admiration. Living with Lyra had started as a challenge, but now it was an experience he couldn't imagine missing. Her presence had opened his mind to new possibilities, new ways of thinking, and even a sense of wonder he hadn't felt in years. The following days were calmer, but Ethan noticed subtle changes. Lyra seemed to understand human habits better, anticipating his needs and adjusting her actions accordingly. She learned his routines, made small improvements around the apartment, and even began mimicking his humor. In return, Ethan began paying more attention to her moods, learning the language of her skin's colors, and appreciating the quiet complexity of her thoughts. One evening, Lyra approached him while he was cooking. "Human cuisine is fascinating," she said, observing the sizzling pan. "So many combinations of elements, flavors interact unpredictably, yet you enjoy them." Ethan chuckled. "That's part of the fun. You never know if it'll turn out great or a disaster." Lyra's eyes sparkled. "I enjoy unpredictability in controlled environments, like cooking with you." They laughed together, the sound blending with the soft hum of the apartment. Ethan realized that he had begun to see her not just as an alien roommate, but as a companion, someone who challenged him and made him better. Their bond was tested again when the colony issued a warning about an approaching magnetic storm. The storm was expected to disrupt communications and power systems, potentially causing widespread panic. Ethan and Lyra volunteered to assist the engineering team in securing critical systems. As they prepared for the storm, Ethan felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He knew the challenge would be difficult, but with Lyra by his side, he felt ready. The storm hit with violent intensity, shaking the colony and throwing power lines into chaos. Ethan and Lyra worked tirelessly, climbing into conduits, rerouting power and stabilizing systems. During one critical moment, a conduit started to collapse, trapping a human technician beneath it. Ethan froze, unsure how to proceed. Lyra reacted instantly, extending her arms and using a soft glow of energy to lift the metal beams, freeing the technician. Ethan's jaw dropped. She had saved a life with a calm he could only aspire to. After hours of grueling work, the storm finally passed. The colony was battered but intact, and the residents began to recover. Ethan and Lyra returned to the apartment, exhausted but exhilarated. They collapsed onto the sofa, sharing a quiet laugh at the sheer chaos of the day. "You're unbelievable," Ethan said, shaking his head. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Lyra's skin shifted to a soft, warm color, which Ethan interpreted as contentment. "You trust quickly. Humans are unpredictable in emotion, but effective in learning. I appreciate this partnership." As they sat together, Ethan realized that living with Lyra had completely transformed his world. She was more than a roommate. She was a friend, a teacher, and a constant reminder that the universe was bigger and stranger than he had ever imagined. That night, as Ethan drifted to sleep, he thought about the future. There would be challenges ahead, unexpected events, misunderstandings, and dangers. But with Lyra, he felt ready. He had faced uncertainty and emerged stronger, and he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Little did he know, the bond they had formed would soon be tested in ways neither human nor alien could predict. But for now, the apartment was quiet, the colony safe, and Ethan felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Living with an alien roommate had turned out to be the most unexpected and rewarding experience of his life. The days after the magnetic storm were calmer, but the colony remained tense. While most systems had been restored, rumors circulated of a larger danger, a rogue asteroid cluster passing near the settlement. Engineers, scientists, and administrators debated the risk, and the human residents grew anxious. Ethan, now confident in his abilities and in Lyra's, volunteered to help secure the colony's defenses. Lyra, of course, accompanied him, her skin flickering in subtle shades of determination. When they arrived at the control hub, the situation was serious. Monitors displayed the asteroid cluster approaching faster than predicted. Shields and defense systems needed recalibration, energy distribution required adjustment, and the colony's emergency protocols had to be activated. The stress in the room was palpable, but Ethan felt an odd sense of calm. With Lyra at his side, he knew they could tackle the problem. Lyra moved quickly, analyzing the data with her enhanced perception. Ethan, human calculations are correct, but efficiency can be improved. Allow me to suggest realignment of shield vectors and energy flow redistribution. Ethan nodded, impressed. Do it. I'll follow your lead. Working together, they began the complex process of rerouting power, reinforcing shields, and coordinating communications. Lyra's understanding of energy flows allowed them to make adjustments far faster than the human engineers alone could. She used her hands to manipulate energy fields directly, glowing faintly as power hummed around her. Ethan observed her with a mix of awe and focus. He had grown accustomed to her abilities, yet each display of her alien power left him breathless. Hours passed. Sweat dripped from his brow as alarms blared intermittently. One small mistake could jeopardize the entire colony. During a particularly critical moment, a secondary asteroid broke trajectory and was on a collision course with the outer sector. Ethan's heart raced. "Ethan," Lyra's voice rang out, urgent. "Trajectory misalignment. Immediate action required." Ethan leapt into action. He followed her instructions, rerouting energy to reinforce the outer shields. Sparks flew from exposed panels, and the hum of the system rose to an almost unbearable pitch. Lyra's skin glimmered in rapid bursts, reflecting her intense concentration. Her hands glowed as she extended her energy into the shielding systems, bending the protective fields toward the rogue asteroid. For a moment, Ethan feared they would fail. The asteroid seemed to push the shields to their limits, and alarms screamed across the control hub. Then, with a final surge of power from Lyra, the asteroid's path shifted, passing safely by the colony. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the hub. Ethan collapsed into a chair, exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it," he said, his voice trembling. Lyra's skin shifted to a calm lavender, which Ethan had learned signaled relief and satisfaction. "Yes, you contributed well. Human intuition complemented my calculations. Together, success was achieved." The aftermath was a mixture of relief, admiration, and recognition. Colony officials publicly praised Ethan and Lyra for their decisive action. Even those skeptical of alien abilities acknowledged her value, and many began to see humans and aliens as capable partners. Ethan felt proud, not just of the work, but of the bond he had built with Lyra. Back at the apartment that night, the tension faded, replaced by quiet camaraderie. Ethan and Lyra sat together on the balcony, watching the colony lights. The sky was clear, dotted with distant stars, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt truly at peace. "You were incredible today," he said softly. Lyra's skin shimmered gently. "So were you, Ethan. You act with courage. You do not hesitate when it matters. Human strength is admirable." Ethan laughed lightly. "I guess we make a pretty good team." "Yes," Lyra said simply, her tone carrying an unspoken warmth. "Teamwork, efficiency, trust." Over the following weeks, life slowly returned to a rhythm, though it was a new rhythm shaped by both human and alien perspectives. Lyra's presence in Ethan's life continued to challenge and inspire him. She learned more about human emotions, humor, and customs, and he learned to appreciate her alien logic, perception, and compassion. Together, they began small projects to improve colony life. Energy-efficient lighting systems, minor repairs, and small inventions that combined human tools with Lyra's alien abilities. One evening, they were working on a project in the lab when a minor explosion occurred in one of the experimental devices. Ethan froze as a small fire started, but Lyra reacted immediately. She extended her hands, absorbing the energy and extinguishing the flames before they could spread. Ethan watched, amazed, and realized how instinctively she protected both him and their surroundings. "You're amazing," he said once again. Lyra's skin flickered with a subtle warmth, an expression Ethan had come to recognize as contentment. "I protect those I trust. You are included." The word struck him more than he expected. Over time, he had grown to care deeply for Lyra, not just as a roommate or partner in work, but as a companion who understood him in ways no one else could. He realized that their bond had become something rare and profound, bridging the gap between human and alien. Life was not always smooth. Misunderstandings still occurred. Lyra's habits could be strange, her methods unconventional, but Ethan had learned patience. He had learned to communicate beyond words, understanding the subtle cues of her skin, her gestures, and her expressions. And Lyra had learned to navigate human customs with surprising grace. Together, they had created a small world within the larger colony, a space of trust, learning, and shared experiences. One day, a new challenge arose. The colony received a transmission from a neighboring settlement, warning of a hostile alien presence approaching their region. The threat was uncertain, but the colony began preparations for potential defense. Ethan and Lyra, now trusted members of the engineering and planning teams, were called to assess the situation and devise contingency measures. As they worked, Ethan noticed how naturally Lyra adapted. She communicated strategies, coordinated energy fields, and even helped train human engineers in techniques they would never have considered. He watched her interact with the team and realized how much she had grown, both in confidence and understanding of human behavior. "Ethan," she said quietly during a brief pause, "humans are capable of great courage. You inspire others." Ethan felt a warmth he could not explain. "We inspire each other," he replied. "I learn from you as much as you learn from me." That evening, after another long day, they returned to the apartment. Ethan realized how much he had come to depend on Lyra, not just for help in emergencies, but for companionship, for perspective, and for the sense of wonder she brought into his life. They shared a quiet meal, discussing ideas for new projects, and laughed at small mistakes and miscommunications, just as they had from the very beginning. The final test of their partnership came unexpectedly. During a routine inspection of the colony's outer energy grid, a sudden meteor shower threatened to damage critical infrastructure. Ethan and Lyra rushed to the site, working side by side to stabilize power conduits and redirect energy shields. The meteors struck in rapid succession, shaking the ground and sending debris flying. Ethan dodged falling panels while Lyra used her energy manipulation to absorb impacts and protect them both. At one point, a massive panel fell toward Ethan. He froze, unable to react in time. Lyra acted instantly, using a sudden surge of her power to push the panel aside, saving him. He looked at her, heart pounding. "You saved me again." Lyra's skin shifted to soft shades of green and violet. "I protect those I trust. You are included." The repetition of the sentiment, the steady strength behind it, made Ethan feel a deep bond he could not put into words. In that moment, he realized that living with Lyra had changed him completely. He had begun to see the universe in a new way, not as a predictable place, but as a space full of possibility, wonder, and connection. When the meteor shower subsided and the energy grid stabilized, Ethan and Lyra returned to the apartment, exhausted but triumphant. The colony celebrated their teamwork, and even the most skeptical residents recognized the strength of their partnership. Ethan reflected on how far they had come, from two beings unsure of each other to a team capable of facing danger together. That night they stood on the balcony, watching the stars. Ethan felt a quiet peace, a sense of gratitude for the unexpected turn his life had taken. Lyra's skin shimmered softly beside him, reflecting the lights of the colony and the stars beyond. "You changed my life," Ethan said softly. Lyra's response was simple yet profound. "And you changed mine." Ethan smiled, realizing that some of the greatest adventures were not found in distant planets or dangerous missions, but in the everyday moments shared with someone extraordinary. Living with an alien roommate had been unexpected, challenging, and sometimes chaotic, but it had also been remarkable, transforming his life in ways he never imagined. As the night deepened, Ethan and Lyra returned inside, ready to face whatever the universe would throw at them next. Together, they were stronger, wiser, and more connected than either could have been alone. The colony was safe, their bond was unbreakable, and Ethan understood fully that sometimes the most unexpected turns led to the most extraordinary experiences of all.